What does an occupational or organisational psychologist do, and why is proactivity such an important psychological skill to nurture? In this episode, I am joined once again by Dr. Jo Gray, who is an organisational psychologist. We explore how psychologists can facilitate meaningful change in workplaces, and why proactivity, not just in ourselves, but in teams and systems, is key to long-term success and well-being at work. If you're curious about different branches in psychology, or you want to understand how to support growth and change in organisations, this one's for you. Welcome along to the Aspiring Psychologist podcast. I am Dr. Marianne Trent, a qualified clinical psychologist. It's so lovely to have you here. And we are welcoming back a previous guest today because the content has been really helpful and people have been reaching out to Jo and to myself. So with no further ado, let's dive in and say hello again to Jo. I just want to welcome back a lovely face who's been with us before. It's Dr. Jo Gray. Welcome back, Jo.
Thank you. So lovely to see you and be here.
It really is lovely to see you, and I've invited you back because there's been quite the appetite for occupational and organisational psychology since we first met. When we met, you were just coming to the end of your training. You are now qualified. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It already feels like a long time ago, but yes, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, like life moves very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But so if people want to know more about you and how, what the field of organizational occupational psychology is and your experiences, they should definitely check out the previous episode, which will be linked in the show notes and in the description. But today is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to kind of hand over the reins to our expert organizational psychologist to set the context and to kind of talk us through what this episode's going to be like. So over to you, Jo.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to come back, and also a privilege to see your lovely face again. So, and I thought, obviously, after having some discussions with you and having had some of your listeners and viewers reach out to me following the last episode, it does seem like there's an appetite to understand a little bit more about what organizational or occupational psychologists do. They are one and the same thing. It's linked to whether you're registered with the BPS or not. So I will kind of interchange. I'll use organizational psychologists for the purposes of today. And what I thought would be helpful is maybe just outline, just like as a clinical psychologist, you have an approach to the way you work. I thought it might be helpful to kick off maybe just highlighting, there's a lot of terminology around evidence-based practitioners, and I think it's a little bit of a buzzword that maybe would be helpful for people to understand a little bit more about and what that means in the context of work psychology at work. So I thought I could talk to you about that, and then I thought we could maybe talk about some scenarios that might crop up, the kinds of work that I have been involved in or get involved in, or some of my colleagues get involved in, just to highlight some of the tools and the processes that we would tend to draw on, if that's helpful. And then I would like the opportunity to tell you a little bit about my upcoming book.
Oh, that sounds all amazing. And it is not brand new information because, as you said, we've already discussed this. But I love that. And I love that you've come with such enthusiasm for this. So we have already had a think about kind of some case studies, and we will come on to those. But please do go ahead.
Yeah, I thought, as I said, before we got into scenarios, it would be helpful just to kind of set out some of the basic principles, because I think there is also this kind of organizational occupational psychology. What even is that? An evidence-based practitioner. So I thought it'd be helpful because I would describe myself as an evidence-based practitioner and consultant. So what does that even mean? And it really is about how we approach our work. And when it comes to client work, so we'll talk about these scenarios in a minute, but when a client comes with something they want help with, then I would tend to use what we call the consultancy cycle. And that essentially involves starting off, having the conversation, trying to understand what their needs are, and doing what we call contracting, setting some expectations about what's within our gift or scope of influence, what we can do, some of the really basic things as an independent practitioner, how much you charge, how long do things take, the kind of processes involved. So it's the contracting piece. So you set off with a relationship there's no room for ambiguity, which is really important, right? That's the kind of first stage. Then once we've agreed there's some work to do together, we get into what we call the information gathering stage. And that's where, when you hear about evidence-based practice, this is that we're gathering information from multiple sources. So if you're my client and you come to me with a problem, I'm not going to just take your word for that. Sorry. I'm going to want to do a little bit more digging around, want to come in, maybe make some observations. And again, I know you do that in a clinical sense. You would work with a client, but you're going to want to gather context. Also draw on personal experience, which I have quite a bit of. Also looking at the academic literature, which can be really helpful, but we need to know sometimes that has its limitations depending on what the setting of the study was. We need to be careful about saying research says, but actually if there's several studies in the same setting that you find yourself in, then you can start to say, oh, okay, there's some evidence here, there's some interventions here, there's some theories here that could be relevant. And so with all of that information, you're then in a position to start making some plans, recommendations. So you formulate, get the client sign off, and then obviously start to deliver those. And importantly, reflect on it as you're going through, report on it, and then do a thorough evaluation to show that this was worth doing. It worked. People want to see a return on investment. So that's what we describe is the consultancy cycle. Does that make sense?
It does, and it sounds exciting. And because I'm excited about lots of things, I'm like, oh yes, I'd like to do that. And I know that is a nice trait, but also can be problematic in organisations as well. And we might well cover that later too. But yes, it sounds amazing, Jo. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is. It's a rigorous approach, and sometimes people might want to cut corners. I would say, it's a proven sort of structure that works well. I'll just quickly delve into this information gathering piece, because this is when you can also then start drawing on other frameworks. And I've previously used this approach that we call design thinking to organisational interventions. So, and again, it's you're thinking in different stages. So I've got my own take on this. So design thinking is all about understanding what the problem is, figuring out what your options are with the evidence you've got, and then creating plans and launching them. So I've created my own version of that called the Progress Formula, because my consultancy is called the Progress Lab, although I do a lot of work within proactive behaviour. But and I call it the Progress Formula, and it's 5 Ps, and it's about probing the problem identification, processing the possibilities, creating purposeful plans, propagating, so getting them out there by bringing people on board, so participating within, getting participation, and then proofing is the evaluation piece. So that's all the kind of technical jargon out of the way, but I think that just gives you a sense of, I guess, why working with a qualified occupational psychologist, organisational psychologist might give you a slightly different experience to someone who's maybe not got that training and background.
Absolutely. And this is why it's really important to work with people with the appropriate qualifications. I understand that you are not registered with the HCPC because you didn't do a psychology undergrad, but you still have the professional qualifications.
Yes.
And so I think for me, that's a bit of a learning point as well, is that people might be having the right qualification, but there may be good and important reasons why they're not registered with the HCPC. So I've learned something there too, Jo.
There you go.
So our first case study is looking at supporting employees during organisational change. So the context for that, a large financial services organisation is undergoing a major restructure due to a merger. The company is consolidating departments, leading to role changes, job uncertainty, and potential layoffs. Employees are anxious about their future, and HR is concerned about a decline in morale and performance. So let's take a look at the challenges here. There's discomfort around the change. Employees exhibit low engagement and cooperation, delaying the implementation of new processes. Communication issues. A lack of transparent communication leads to rumours and misinformation. And lastly, trust perceptions. Uncertainty makes employees hesitant to share ideas or collaborate effectively. All right, so that's our first little case study or vignette. And I think these can be really helpful approaches to really help people get an understanding of what work would an occupational or organisational psychologist do. Could you give us a brief overview of what you would do in this example?
Yeah, and I like this example for several reasons. One, it happens fairly frequently, lots of organisations, particularly in the current kind of economic, socio-political context, as organisations merge. They have for a long time. And I've worked in organisations when I worked almost 20 years in corporate roles and experienced the merge situation several times. So I've got that first-hand experience, not altogether positive, if I'm honest. So that was one of, I'm always motivated by how you can do things differently. So I've got that first-hand experience. And it is really difficult for employees. And when I talk employees, I'm talking everybody, really difficult for everybody, and for managers, for leaders, everybody in the organization. It can be really difficult. I've worked with various scenarios like this, and it kind of depends what's needed at the time. But there's various things that you might get involved with. So, I mean, at a strategic level, if I was brought in at a sort of strategic level, if they were really still trying to figure out what these changes meant for the sort of the organizational design, then we might get involved at that level. And that might be, again, looking at the evidence around change management, organizational design, and job design. So in previous work that I've done, I have looked at different frameworks. There's actually, probably not surprising to you, there is so many different frameworks on what good organizational change should look like. Yet, interestingly, some really outdated frameworks are still being used, and this is one of the frustrations sometimes in our work, that there's almost like that face validity of some frameworks, even though we're kind of like, that was developed in the 80s, 90s, and things have changed. So there's quite a lot of change frameworks out there that get used often, but actually aren't, in my opinion, the best. And I actually did a project when I was going through my professional doctorate, where I did a project that involved a change. And I actually did a little light touch review of all the different change frameworks, and almost tried to get to taking the best from to come up with something really good. So I do have a little adapted version and process for how you therefore help an organization go through some of the change. Communication tends to be one of the biggest issues in organizations when they're going through change, whether it's what they're communicating, how they're communicating, the frequency in which they're communicating or not. So communication tends to be something that we might get involved in, helping the senior team communicate the vision and be able to bring people on with them. I've also done work previously where actually if the organization's looking for employees to actually participate in giving their perspectives on things, I would really advocate. So, running focus groups, try and do some kind of appreciative inquiry. What is good about, what's currently here? What would you absolutely want to keep in a new version of this organization? So actually conducting some qualitative research, getting that participation, that helps people with what we call change readiness. So you're bringing people on the journey rather than, coming from the top. Here, this is what we're doing, and everyone goes, why would you do that? Doesn't make sense. So trying to combine that kind of bottom up and top down approach to change.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And it's kind of forefront in my mind anyway today, because when I was eating my lunch, we're recording on the day where the news broke that WH Smith is going to be only focusing on its travel and airport shops. It's going to be disappearing from the high street and it's being bought out by someone else. And so as you were speaking, I was thinking, God, this is going to happen to
Yeah.
so many people across the UK that are currently working for WH Smith and presumably will be 2P'd into this new organisation. But actually, the WH Smith brand has been on the high street for over 200 years. It's
Wow.
very,
Yeah.
it's very, embedded in UK culture, and that will run through the organisation. And they made it clear to say that actually the shops are still doing well. It's just that they really want to see themselves pivoting to be a travel retail brand, which is
Yeah.
not the same kind of as on high street presence, is it?
Yeah, and I guess they're evolving to the needs of the consumer and to their stakeholders to a certain degree. So, and some of these changes can be difficult for people to process. So, one of the other things that I do a lot actually is organisations going through significant changes is more of a kind of learning and development type initiative. So, whether that be helping at an individual level, build some resilience, build some coping strategies for navigating change, because change is tricky, right? Even I'm someone who really leans into it, but some things, particularly if you really enjoy your job and the way things are structured and the colleagues, that feels like a loss if that's going to change. So it can create a real emotional response, and it's difficult for people. So I do a lot of work at that individual level, but also helping leaders and managers be able to support their teams in navigating some of those changes is really important. And actually, I mean, one thing I always say when I'm working with leaders and managers is you've also got to put your own oxygen mask on first, because you are also going through this change and you're supporting others. You're trying to be the best manager you can be. You're, soaking up some of that emotional contagion, and you're trying to remain positive and motivated and driven when you yourself are experiencing some of those feelings. So it can be really tricky time. um,
Mm.
but there are, again, lots of things, lots of strategies that we can encourage people to think about and work out what's going to give them some energy and what's going to, deplete it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I guess it's thinking about what the primary emotions are when we see a secondary activity like anger or kind of fear. There'll be a
Mm.
very good and important reason that probably comes first. And it seems like what you do as an occupational organisational psychologist is to kind of support everybody so that it feels less us versus them, and
Yeah.
kind of we're in it together, and we're kind of trying to find a way that honours and respects everybody in this organisation, not just those at the top.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that's what, a lot of the work I would do reminds the senior leaders and decision makers that actually, if you want to create a kind of culture of change, you need to bring people on the journey with you. People do not like feeling done to. Yeah, and that's where then this whole participation and, involving, whether it's focus groups, improvement groups, getting people and listening to them and being honest about what you can respond to, and being honest about what you can and fulfilling that. So again, communication comes back. It's at the heart of it. And I always say when the communication breaks down,
You've
unfortunately,
got
the
a problem.
change, you're going to have a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Joe. Let's go on to our second case study. Our second one is addressing issues around employee burnout. So the context is an HR professional in a pharmaceutical company notices a significant rise in absenteeism and turnover among employees in operations. Employee Assistance Programme, EAP data, reveals an increase in stress-related claims. Employees report feeling overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and disengaged. Our challenges: are reduced productivity. Staff are mentally and physically exhausted, affecting their performance. Increased turnover. This is driving higher attrition, putting additional strain on remaining employees. And low morale. Employees feel undervalued and unsupported, creating a negative workplace atmosphere. Okay, so what are you doing in that case?
And again, sadly, this is not unusual. We are seeing more of this. Interestingly, when I did my master's dissertation in 2018, my topic was around well-being at work, and at that time, burnout was this, I think it was the second or even third reason for long-term sickness absence. Musculoskeletal was absolutely by quite a difference at the top. That has changed in the UK in the last couple of years, with burnout now at the top. So there is obviously some things going on. There are things going on that are contributing to that, and this is a reality for people. Just so we're really clear on burnout, when we talk about burnout within a work context, it is exhaustion. And by being exhausted, we're not thinking as well. So cognitive impairment. When I know what I'm like on sleep deprivation, emotionally unstable, so emotional impairment, and actually that combination starts to make you withdraw, distance, kind of, we become more cynical, apathetic, that kind of thing. And again, you probably see some of this in your work, but there is some overlaps. And as I said, we're seeing more of it, particularly in roles where there are what feels like intolerable demands. I'm really interested in this one today because I was at a fabulous conference last week, of a conference like no other. It was in Holland, and it was celebrating a theory that we use a lot in workplace wellbeing, called the job demands resources theory. It was inspired by Eva Demiruti and built on with her supervisor at the time, Wilma Schiffelli, Arnold Backer. These are really big names in organisational psychology. And that theory was developed 25 years ago. So we were at this festival last week celebrating the knowledge that has developed over the last 25 years relating to this theory. And when I talk to people about it, the best way to describe it is that imagine you've got a set of weighing scales, and you've got all of your job demands weighing you down on one side, workload, pressure, colleagues, all that kind of thing, relationships if they're not going well, although these are all demands. And then the other side, you've got your resources. And the idea, so when we have good relationships with our colleagues, we've got support from our line managers and leaders, all that enriching stuff. The idea is if we've got it in equilibrium, we're going to be feeling okay. If the demands are just completely outweighing the resources available, we're going to be on that one-way ticket to burnout. Interestingly, if we've got too many resources and they're outweighing the demands, that's when we actually get a bit bored. So there is a balance to achieve. So that's a really good theory to try and draw on, to so often use that to try and understand, what are people's demands and what are the resources, and is there a misbalance here. What was also really inspiring, and I can't give too much on this because I haven't done enough analysis of it since last week, but so Wilma Schiffelli, who decades and decades of experience in stress and burnout at work, has recently created a new diagnostic for measuring burnout. It's called the Burnout I think it's short for BAT, so Burnout Assessment Tool. So that's a new diagnostic that actually, again, recognizing that the original burnout as instrument was developed decades ago. There's some limitations to it. So there's a new burnout assessment tool that I would certainly look to use as part of the information gathering. I draw on the job designs to try and get to what's going on here, then start to do qualitative interviews, try and find out what's driving the excessive demands potentially. And once we kind of have that information, then it's about trying to design interventions. And when it comes to well-being interventions, I would always take the participation route for wellbeing interventions. People who work in the organisation know what they need. So getting them, and there was another brilliant psychologist who I'm sadly is no longer with us, Corinna Nielsen from Sheffield University, who did brilliant work around wellbeing interventions using participative techniques, getting people on board. So that would be something I would also definitely advocate. And then start to look at some of the job design. So again, another academic hero for me is Sharon Parker. Her work on proactive behaviour is one of my inspirations, but she's also done a lot of work in work design and has a really great framework called the SMART work design. And it really brings in how are we creating healthy, sustainable jobs. So that these are just some of the things I tap into.
Amazing. And, it's really lovely to hear about the people that inspired you. But let's not forget that for many people, Dr. Joe Gray is going to be a real inspiration, and the first occupational and organisational psychologists they will have heard of might well have been from this podcast. It might be this one they're watching right now. And there might be organisations themselves watching this thinking, why do we need an organisational psychologist? And you're demonstrating beautifully why they need that occupational or organisational psychologist. So I think you are certainly one to watch as well, Joe. Before we think about exactly why with your book that's coming out, shall we have a look at our third case study?
Yeah.
So supporting organisations to promote a speak up culture. What's the context? The leadership team in a mid-sized software development company known for its cutting-edge products has noticed that employees are increasingly reluctant to speak up in meetings, share ideas or raise concerns. Leadership has observed that innovation and problem solving have slowed, and there's growing frustration among managers who feel disconnected from their teams. What are the challenges? We've got disengagement among employees, leading to a lack of accountability and impacting on team dynamics. And the organisation is at risk of losing its competitive edge and impact on future sustainability. Okay, Joe, this last one is over to you.
And this one really speaks to my area of expertise, proactive behaviour at work. So speaking up is what we describe as a proactive behaviour. Proactive behaviour, self-initiated in order to change the current situation or the environment. So if you think about speaking up, I'm speaking up because I want something to change. Or if we're speaking up and it's around innovation, I'm speaking up because I want to create something. So that idea of creating the speak up culture, it can be to highlight kind of issues within an organization. You might speak up if there's some bad behavior being experienced. That's one form of speaking up. But speaking up around improvement ideas, innovation, all that kind of thing, that's also a speaking up type of behavior. So speaking up comes in various different guises. And I guess it's important if you're, because again, a lot of buzzwords about, we want to create a speak up culture. Be really clear. What is it? Why is that important? And why are you trying to do it? And if you are trying to create a speak up culture, then you absolutely need to make sure that the environment is safe for people to speak up. So this really does speak to a lot of my own work. So bit of some shameless plugging here. But so one of the things I have designed, so I've got a new website, which is called poweringproactivity.com. And I've created what's called the Proactivity Pulse. And that is a short diagnostic that asks questions to almost determine which proactive behaviours are in evidence or not within your organisation. And there's kind of 6 key proactive behaviours that I've identified that organisations tend to appreciate value. Speaking up will be one of them. So I would probably be asking some of those questions from the speaker. I'd probably, to be fair, I'd probably ask someone to do the whole pulse. And I've designed it in a way that actually you could get a whole team to do it, and then I can aggregate and come back with scores for the whole organisation. So there's that option. And that would then pinpoint, okay, actually it's speaking up, maybe, and innovative behaviour, what's sort of causing that. So once we've got the diagnosis, then it's trying to understand what might be driving it. And that's where my book is premised on the proactive work design framework. So it's a 9-dimensional model using the word proactive, and there are 9 factors to consider. And the idea is that if you get those 9, if you, based on the evidence that's out there, if you are doing those 9 things, the chances are you're going to have a pretty empowered workforce. But if some of those are lacking, then it can have a real impact on certain proactive behaviours. So I'm going to stick with the speaking up. Psychological safety is absolutely a prerequisite of a speak up culture. So if people do not feel safe to speak up, guess what? They're going to be silent. So I imagine you've probably heard there's quite a lot of psychological safety gets bandied around quite a bit. Again, if you're on LinkedIn, quite often this idea of psychological safety, and it really is premised on the idea that the environment feels safe for people, that they're not going to get, told off or shut down or, reprimanded.
You see that in, when they have wellbeing employee surveys, don't they? And even in the NHS, every year there'll be a satisfaction survey, but then there'll also be the meme of people being escorted out by security for really sharing what they think. And so it's exactly like you say, it doesn't feel psychologically safe to actually be honest about what it's like to work there.
I think, there's the psychological safety, and are people going to do something with that? Because sometimes, I speak up, I'm not being heard. So, there's also the idea of how we can kind of create influence, help people to develop the skill to be able to be heard in a way that influences others and allows them to be heard. So, so there's a few chapters in the book that I would say are very much linked to speaking up. But the idea and the way the book is premised is that you do that diagnostic, and the things that you're already doing well, great. Don't worry too much about those. Let's try and work on the areas that probably need a little bit of attention. The other thing I have also recently worked on is I've created a kind of coaching framework around how to build confidence in speaking up. And I've used, again, sorry, I'm a bit overuse of acronyms, but it's called the SAFE framework. And the S is for psychological safety. So a little bit of a stretch, PS, but psychological safety, so safety, authenticity, fairness, and emotions. And the idea there is, one, we need to be psychologically safe, like I just explained, but also to speak up, you need to feel that authentic. You need to feel like, you can be authentic. And again, sometimes in organizations, there are social norms, expectations, and people don't feel like they can be authentic. And that's, you need to feel authentic and true to your values to be able to speak up on things that are important to you. So it's the authenticity piece is about helping individuals build confidence to be true to themselves. So that's the kind of authenticity one. The fairness considerations, a lot of people speak up when things are unfair. We tend to have, some of us have higher fairness barometers than others, but most people will respond when they see something that's unfair. So it's about bringing to their attention, if this feels unfair, how can you therefore communicate that in a way that's authentic to you, that people will be willing to listen to. And then the last one is recognizing that sometimes our emotions can get in the way of being heard. So how can we bring some kind of emotional regulation so that, again, we can be heard without people kind of, dismissing us. So those are like techniques that you can coach someone to help build those areas of strength to give them the power to and confidence to speak up.
Amazing. And I love all your acronyms. I love them. And it makes them, Yeah, it makes them easy to remember, doesn't it? But also to kind of use, to implement, because you kind of can stick them up and then they catch your eye. Like, oh, I should do that. I should do that. Use that. And I liked that you had your own five P's model as well, because
Yeah,
that's like it's a CBT thing, isn't it? But now it
yeah.
obviously is an occupational psychologist thing as well. So we are sold on this as being really helpful. We are sold on you. And so we should be definitely checking out your brand new book, baby, shouldn't we, Jo? Tell us about your new
Yes.
book.
So I've obviously been alluding to it already. So it's called Powering Workplace Proactivity: How to Create a Future-Focused, Change-Oriented Culture. And it's recognizing that proactive behaviors can be really helpful for organizations, but individuals may not always feel that the environment that within their organization is enabling or stimulating that behavior. So I'm a big advocate of this kind of fix the environment before you try to fix the person. I think sometimes within psychology generally, we have a tendency to want to fix the person first and foremost. And I think actually, if the environment is right, then actually that might enable the person to thrive. They don't need fixing. So, this idea of let's fix the environment first. And then if there's still there will still be individuals who, for one reason or another, lack confidence, lack, the self-esteem and self-efficacy. You need to be proactive and, might need a bit more hand holding. But let's just get the environment right first. And so that is what the book is about, creating the environment, the culture, before we start just fixing people.
And that really made me think about comparing and contrasting, for example, the NHS versus YouTube and Google as an employer. So I went to the YouTube offices earlier this year, and they have a free canteen. You might know this already, Jo, but they have a free canteen that's like buffet, amazing salads, soups, kind of little Brazilian tapas and burgers and fresh pastas and deliciousness, all the drinks, all the puddings, all of that. And it's free for all employees if they're on site that day. They also have a rooftop terrace with barista-made coffees, with an ice cream fridge. All of that's free. You get access to the gym there. You also get massage credits that you get to use. You get so many massage credits a year, and then you can also buy extra massages. And I just think, you know what, that's a pretty cool culture. Obviously people will still choose to leave at some point in the future, of course, but I think it's about, for me, valuing your employees, whereas when I was in the NHS, I once got a pair of fluffy socks as my Christmas bonus with one chocolate gold coin. And I actually said at the time, I would have rather had the £2 it cost them to buy. And had they consulted us on what we wanted on our bonus, I don't think anybody would have said, I'd like a pair of fluffy socks and a chocolate coin. So I think, I know that Google and NHS are not really comparable as an organisation, but, that's what resonated with me when I heard you say what you said.
Yeah. And I think, it's also about the job design, so the perks around the edges, lovely, but it's about giving people opportunities to have meaningful work, regardless of what that role is. But they do feel that they're being heard and I'm contributing. So when we talk to people around when they feel empowered, when they're being proactive and it's wanted and valued, then they are, pride, joy, energized. So we're actually creating, on that scales I talked about earlier. Yeah, proactive behavior, when welcomed, can be a resource, can also be a demand, because if we're in an environment where it's not welcome and I'm pushing, it's like I'm hitting brick wall every time I come up with something, that becomes a demand, and that can actually lead people to burn out and leave. So there's a double-edged, proactivity itself is double-edged, but when the environment is right for it and individuals can exercise it, that's when the magic happens. So that's kind of that's what I want to do. I want to create workplaces where people feel they can go to work, contribute, feel like they're having meaningful experiences, and someone's valuing it, and as a result the organization's doing well. That's my aim.
You're all thriving together, you
Yeah,
know? You're earning money in a way that feels like it's authentic to you, makes you feel good. You've got joy in delivering that service that makes it feel like what you are delivering is being appreciated by everyone, by, the clients, but also by the
mm,
people around you. They're not undermining you. They're not kind of jealous of you. They're not sniping at you.
yeah,
It actually feels like a joy to come to work. And that is not impossible. It is possible for that to be the case, and not just in a self-employed situation.
yeah,
That's not the
yeah.
only environment where you can love your job.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Amazing. So who is the ideal client for your book, do you think, Joe?
So, if you're a HR professional, for sure, if you're involved, anyone, HR professional, organizational development consultants, anyone who's in an organization and has an influence over how work is designed and the organization is designed, uh, leaders at any level, managers, anyone who has an influence in creating the culture, which, so do individuals, but it is, it's leaders, managers, even coaches, because quite a lot of the intervention. So within the book, I've got some little tools and some resources, and there are some coaching interventions. So actually, even if you are a coach who's interested in helping people and organizations, leaders create those environments, then it could also be helpful for them.
Perfect. And we are releasing this episode at the point where this is a brand new book, baby. You can go out and buy this now. Is Amazon the best place to go, or is it available in other places too?
It's available in all good outlets. If you go to my website, poweringproactivity.com, for a limited time, there is a discount code that you can use at Routledge. So the publishers are Routledge. So routledge.com, you can go there. And if you want to benefit from the discount code, go via my website. It's on Amazon, it's on Waterstones, and hopefully other reputable book outlets.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Joe. And I believe that code is currently available until the end of June 2025, but there might well be future discount codes available. So please do go and check out Joe's website. Joe, where's the best place for people to be able to connect with you, follow you, engage with your work?
So LinkedIn, I would say, although I've got an Instagram page for Powering Proactivity, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Joe Gray. But there's also Powering Proactivity has a LinkedIn page and a Instagram page. So yeah, you will find me. One confusing thing is on the book, it's Joanne Gray. To friends, I'm Joe Gray with an E. I know that's confusing, but so if you can't find me as Joanne Gray, it might be Joe Gray or vice versa.
Joe, thank you so much for your time today and coming back to speak with us. Wishing you the very best of luck with your brand new book, baby. Please do stay in contact, and
I would
hope
love
it
to.
really soars for you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. It's been a joy and pleasure.
Oh, it really has been. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Oh, what an absolute treat it was to speak to Joe. Please, if you do think that you would find her work interesting, please do buy her brand new book, which is available right now. There will be details in the show notes and in the description for this video if you're watching on YouTube. I love it when you tell me how helpful this content is. If there are past episodes that you would like to see broadened or delved into in more depth, please do let me know. Reach out to me on my social media, where I am Dr. Marianne Trent everywhere. Drop me a comment or a question on any YouTube video. If you're listening on Spotify, you can do Q&A questions on there too. If you find the content helpful, you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Please do. And wherever you listen to your podcast, please do follow the show. It really is the kindest thing you can do for any podcaster or creator. If you love conversations about psychology, please do come and join my free psychology group on Facebook, which is called the Aspiring Psychologist Community with Dr. Marianne Trent. And there's a new video every week on Fridays at around 9 a.m, which is called Marianne's Motivation and Mindset. You can also grab your free psychology success guide by going along to my website, www.aspiring-psychologist.co.uk. I will be back along with the next podcast episode on YouTube, which will be 10 a.m. on Saturday and wherever you get your podcast from 6 a.m. on Mondays. Thank you so much for being part of my world. Do take care of yourselves.